So let's start recreating the styles so you can see how I've combined CSS with this table to get the layout that we achieved in the other page. The first thing I'll do is to set the page properties for this table. So if I come up here to Modify Page Properties, I can set a number of things in the page properties, especially if I'm creating a simple page like this. I can take care of many things at once in this one dialog box. And when I do, Dreamweaver will automatically create the corresponding styles based on all of the settings that I enter into this dialog. So the first thing I'll do is set a text style for the page. I want all of the text on this page to be formatted for Donna. And let's make all of it medium size. And let's go ahead and set the margins to 0. And now let's use the links category. There are a number of ways that you can create styles for links, but the links category in page properties is one of the simplest ways to do it. So using the links category, I can simply click and select colors here. So let's set a link color of dark blue. That'll be the color that the link is displayed in when the page is first loaded. Let's set a visited link color to kind of a gray color. So after a link has been clicked on and a visitor has been there, it will turn to gray. The rollover color, this is the hover color, we'll set to that nice red color. And let's make active links the same. By the way, rollover is the color that the link changes to when someone rolls their cursor over it. Active, the fourth link state, is the color that a link can change to when someone is actually actively clicking on it. Since that action is so brief that you hardly notice it, I often set the rollover and active link colors to the same color. Finally, let's set this to never underline, so that the underlining in our links won't distract from our overall design. When you click OK, you'll see that style immediately applied to the page, and you'll see that Dreamweaver has added all of those styles to the CSS panel. So I hope you're starting to see that although there is a great debate on the internet today about whether all sites should be designed with CSS instead of tables, it is quite possible, and in some instances quite appropriate, to combine the two. So let's add a little more style to this page. Let's create a style that adds some padding to this table. Now, of course, you can use the padding option. If I select this table, and that's an easy way to do so, I can come down and add cell padding in the Properties Inspector, and that'll give me a little more space around my table. But a better way to do that is to use CSS and redefine some of the table tags. So let's start by redefining the table data tag. Remember, the table data tag is what creates each of the individual cells. If you're ever not sure what a tag is, just click in the table and use the tag selector to remind you, TD. Yep, I've definitely selected the table data cell. So in my new style, if I want to redefine the way table data cells display, I can create a style called TD, and again, you can choose that from the menu or you can type it in yourself. Click OK. And for this style, all I'm going to do is set the padding to 10. And when I do, you see instantly I get 10 pixels of padding inside each of those table data cells. Now you might notice that I've got some spacing problems. Well, you can click and drag in Dreamweaver to adjust the spacing until we get the table the way we want it. And you see these nice numbers up here at the top telling you exactly how many pixels wide this is. And if you select a column, you can change that by clicking and dragging or by specifying the width here in the Property Inspector. So if I knew I wanted that cell to be 105 pixels, I could set it there. Now, Dreamweaver is going to automatically try and adjust to make sure everything fits properly within this space. So if you've got other cells set to other sizes, you may need to further adjust it to get them all to come out the way you want. Now let's set a style for our table header. Remember, this is the table header row, and in the original design, that had a nice green background. So that's an easy thing to set. We're simply going to redefine the style for the TH tag. So create a new style, and I can type in TH, or I can select it from the drop-down list. Make sure when you're creating tag styles, you use the tag selector and that you've checked this radio button. Also note that again, I'm creating all of these styles in this document only, just to keep things simple in this design. But you could easily create a new external style sheet as you create the style, or you could create a style sheet later and drag these styles into it. For the table header style, let's first set that background color. So just clicking in the color well, selecting that nice green color. Now the text is already bold, so I don't need to worry about that. That's part of the table header style in HTML. But I do want to add padding to the table header cells, just like I did with TDs. So in the box category, I'll add 10 pixels of padding. And you see again, that's instantly applied because we're redefining a tag that's already used on the page. Now let's create a style for our caption. Remember, we added this caption up here at the top. So for that, again, we can create a new style, caption. And let's also add some padding around this one. And let's make that one bold. So we'll set the weight to bold. Okay, we're starting to have a little nicer design here for our table, all done with CSS. And the last thing I might do to make this look a little nicer is to center it on this page. So remember, you can center any block level element like a table or a div by setting the margins left and right to auto. So let's redefine the table tag. And we'll set margins, that's in the box category, not same for all, just auto right and auto left. And you see that instantly centers the table on the page. I'll use the simplest option for centering this graphic and just use the center button in the Properties Inspector. And now you see I have a centered design. I've created a simple table on this HTML page, and I've used CSS to do all of the styling. So let's save it and just make sure it looks good in a browser. Let's preview it in Internet Explorer, and that looks pretty good. Looks like we've got our table all set up, everything's lined up. Of course, these links aren't going to work because this is a very simplistic version of this site, and I don't have all of those pages included in this folder. Now let's try it in Firefox. And there's a little lesson here for all of us, which is that even when you're working on relatively simple designs, even when you're sure everything's fine, it's always important to test in multiple browsers because there's so often something like the caption that isn't centered the way you intended it in at least one of the browsers you might test with. So let's close Firefox. Again, the designs in this series are not created to work in every browser, but I am trying to make sure they at least work in the latest browsers today. So to get this centered so that it will display the way you want in Firefox and Internet Explorer, I am going to double up on the centering here, and I'm going to go back to my caption style, double click, and I'm going to use that centering trick in CSS by setting the margins auto right and auto left. And you see, it still looks about the same here in Dreamweaver. And if I save it and look at it in Internet Explorer, it still looks pretty much the same in Internet Explorer. But now, when I preview this page in Firefox, you see that it is centered the way I intended it. That's a very simplistic example of the kind of thing you have to do if you really want consistent display across lots of browsers with CSS. You will find that you sometimes have to use combinations of styling to get the same display across different browsers. And that is one of the reasons that so many people have stayed with tables, even though they know CSS is a better option.